Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So in this session, we will be discussing some important current affairs from different newspapers in last 1 week, along with some today's important topics as well. And the first topic with which we are going to start the session is about the Sarvam Artificial Intelligence or Sarvam AI, which is going to build India's first homegrown artificial intelligence model. And in fact, one thing that we should remember, as of now, India don't have its own artificial intelligence model, but China already built a low cost and even open source DeepSeek artificial intelligence model, and US also has its own artificial intelligence model. However, the government of India has been planning or making efforts to build its own artificial intelligence model for India. So in this process, the government has recently selected a Bengaluru based startup company, Sarvam AI, to build India's first indigenous artificial intelligence network and a large language model. And this is in the context of China already developing a low cost artificial intelligence model, DeepSeek. And in fact, this is considered as a landmark move by the government of India to bolster India's strategic autonomy in the artificial intelligence sphere. And in fact, as I have already told you, we don't have any homegrown artificial intelligence model, and artificial intelligence is an emerging technology, and for India also, we should have our own homegrown artificial intelligence model. So for this particular purpose, Indian government has selected a Bengaluru based startup, Sarvam AI, to build homegrown artificial intelligence model. And in fact, this particular project will be undertaken by the government's ambitious program, and in fact the government has already allocated 10,370 crore for India AI mission. So the government of India has launched India AI mission, and under this mission the government has catered 10,370 crore for this India AI mission to build India's own indigenous artificial intelligence model and also invest in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. And in fact, the India AI mission actually aimed at a creation of a robust artificial intelligence infrastructure in the country. And apart from that, this infrastructure will be fully developed, deployed and optimized within India. And in fact, this particular development that actually marks a critical and a very important step towards ensuring India's leadership in the artificial intelligence domain. Remember, we don't have any homegrown artificial intelligence networks as of now, but this particular step is considered as a critical and a very important step to ensure India's leadership in the artificial intelligence domain. And apart from that, this particular step is also expected to promote the domestic innovation through the indigenous capabilities. So through this particular program, we will also focus on further enriching the existing indigenous capabilities of our country. So firstly, we will understand Sarvam AI model initiative. And in fact, the government has chosen the Sarvam AI for building a homegrown artificial intelligence model after a rigorous selection process that has involved 67 applications to build India's homegrown artificial intelligence. And in fact, this startup Sarvam AI will receive an extensive support from the government in building India's first homegrown artificial intelligence model. So as part of this extensive support and hand-holding support from the government, it will get around 4,000 high-end graphics processing units for 6 months to build a model from the scratch. So this is the one of the main component of the support that the government is going to provide to the Sarvam AI model. And apart from that, these GPUs will be provided through the companies such as Yota Data Services, Tata Communications and E2E Networks. And in fact, these are the companies which are separately empaneled to create AI data centers in India. So therefore, these companies which are already involved in the creation of AI data centers in India, so they will provide GPUs to Sarvam AI to develop the homegrown AI model in India from scratch. And in fact, the model to be built entirely using the local talent. So we will extensively use the existing local talent and also the local infrastructure as well. And this model is going to have 70 billion parameters, thereby it will be positioned to compete with some of the best AI models across the world. According to Sarvam AI, the large language models, so they will focus on advanced reasoning, voice-based tasks, and fluency in Indian languages, and making it uniquely suited for India's diverse population, right? So ultimately, this particular Indian homegrown artificial intelligence model will be curated to the Indian needs, and it will also support India's diverse population and their needs as well, right? So you can also see why the government has selected Sarvam AI for this particular purpose. So the government has chosen the Sarvam AI because of some reasons. And in fact, the Sarvam AI recently announced that it has raised 41 million to build generative artificial intelligence. So therefore, this generative artificial intelligence that the Sarvam AI is going to build, so it could offer to India's unique and diverse needs. So it would cater to the India's diverse and unique needs. So therefore, Sarvam AI's large Indic language models, so it actually built on Indian languages with voice interfaces, will make it easy for Indians to interact with their respective models. And it is also building an enterprise grade platform, and this enterprise grade platform expected to help companies build Gen AI applications at a scale on their platforms, right? So because of all these reasons, Sarvam AI has been selected by the government. Now, what is the strategic significance of this particular project? The strategic significance of this project involves, it actually goes beyond the technological advancement. So this is not just about the technological advancement, but this is considered as a strategic move by the government to establish a critical AI infrastructure in India, and that is also the objective of the artificial intelligence mission that the government has launched. And the second very important objective is, this particular company Sarvam AI already emphasized that the goal is to create a multimodal, multi-scale foundation models. And in fact, these multimodal and multi-scale foundation models are not just functional but also deeply integrated with different Indian languages and also the large and diverse societal needs in India. Because in India we have a diverse languages, and we also have the diverse needs, and the artificial intelligence model that should actually cater to the diverse needs of the India's population. So if we talk about the benefits of this homegrown artificial intelligence model for the citizens, so this means that artificial intelligence systems that feel familiar and culturally relevant for the most of the Indians. And apart from that, if we talk about the benefits of this artificial intelligence model that will be developed in India for the enterprises, it could actually unlock the potential to harness the AI capabilities. Remember that AI has a huge potential, and in fact, if we tap the potential of artificial intelligence, so that could substantially contribute to the India's economy and the economic development. So therefore, it will help companies to harness the artificial intelligence capabilities without having concerns over the data sovereignty, as all processes will remain within India's borders. So these are the advantages of a homegrown artificial intelligence model for the citizens and also the enterprises. So other details with respect to this Sarvam AI. So the company is called as AxonWise Private Limited or Sarvam AI, and it was founded in Bengaluru on July 2023, and the founders of this particular company are Vivek Raghavan and Pratyush Kumar. So what is the core business? Generative artificial intelligence technologies, which specifically focused on India, so which are curated to the Indian needs. So the total funding that they have raised is 53 million, right? So these are the other details with respect to the Sarvam AI, right? So this is a very important. And next important topic is, which is in news, that a grizzled giant squirrel, which mostly found in Sri Lanka and southern part of India, is found in the Pakkamalai and Gangavaram hills in Tamil Nadu. And in fact, the Tamil Nadu state government has been conducting an extensive survey for the conservation of grizzled giant squirrels. And if you look at the prelims question paper, and UPSC has been asking about these new species, whether they are native to India or they are non-native species, what is their IUCN status, where they are found. So all these details are very often asked. And apart from that, we should also understand the conservation status of different species which are regularly in news. So we will discuss about this grizzled giant squirrel, where it is found, what is its conservation status, and when, in which schedule it is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. So everything we'll try to understand in a detailed manner. So the Villipuram Forest Department of Tamil Nadu is initiating a population study of a grizzled giant squirrel. So on this image you could see that this is a grizzled giant squirrel, and the Tamil Nadu Forest Department or Forest Division has been initiating a detailed population study of this grizzled giant squirrel in Pakkamalai and Gangavaram hills, right? So in fact, the overall objective of this study is to gather the baseline data and also formulate the effective conservation strategies. So remember that if we wanted to frame a conservation strategies for a particular species, we should have a comprehensive data about that particular species, and accordingly we would frame the strategies for the protection and conservation of those respective species. So the overall objective of this particular study of the species is to formulate effective conservation strategies by the state government to protect the grizzled giant squirrel. And its conservation status is that it is protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Remember, whenever any species is placed under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, that species enjoys the highest degree of protection. So you can see on this image, it is talking about the Wildlife Protection Act. So if any species is placed under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act and Part 2 of the Scheduled 2, so these species actually enjoy the highest degree of protection. And apart from that, it is also having the other schedules as well. Part 1 of the Schedule 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5 and Part 6. So these species actually enjoys different degrees of protection based on their threat perception. But here one thing that you should understand is the grizzled giant squirrel is protected under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act, so therefore it enjoys the highest degree of protection. And apart from that, it is having a different schedules with a different perceptions, with different threat perception of species. And in fact, if we talk about the overall species overview of the grizzled giant squirrel. So this grizzled giant squirrel is the smallest member of the giant squirrel family. So in fact there is a giant squirrel family, so which are larger in size. However, the grizzled giant squirrel is smallest of all the giant squirrel family, and in fact it is native to southern part of India and also Sri Lanka, right? So it mostly lives in riparian forests of the southern part of India and Sri Lanka. However, so if we talk about the features or the characteristics of the grizzled giant squirrel, is that it's a distinctive grayish brown body that features white flecks, thereby giving a grizzled appearance to this squirrel. And in fact these squirrels are also called as arboreal species. So what are the arboreal species? And these species, they mostly active during dawn and dusk, right? So these are the species which are mostly active during dawn and dusk. So when we talk about the habitat of these species, these squirrels found in fragmented populations, they don't found in large numbers, and they found in fragmented populations in the southern part of India and also in Sri Lanka. The giant grizzled squirrels are mostly found in Western Ghats. This is very important. You may get a question on this, that the grizzled giant squirrels are mostly found in the Western Ghats, with a notable population concentrated in Chinnar Wildlife Sanctuary and the Annamalai Tiger Reserve, right? So you have to remember this is very important, Chinnar Wildlife Sanctuary and Annamalai Tiger Reserve. And apart from that, the habitat of the squirrel consisting of a dense forest near the rivers, because that actually provides essential resources for foraging and nesting of the squirrel species. And here a different schedules of the Wildlife Protection Act has been given. So Schedule 1 and also Part 2 of the Schedule 2 species enjoys the highest degree protection, and this grizzled giant squirrel is also listed under the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. That means it enjoys the highest degree of protection, right? So the animals which are in the category of endangered species, and in fact those species which are in Schedule 1 and Part 2 of the Schedule 2, so they enjoy the highest degree of protection and they enjoy absolute protection from hunting. For example, tiger and even this giant grizzled squirrel is also part of the Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act. However, when we talk about the Schedule 3 and Schedule 4, so these also have the same provisions of Section 1 and Section 2, but cover animals that not in danger of becoming extinct. So they are not facing that a huge threat, right? So they are not facing the danger of becoming extinct, and that is why they are placed under the Schedule 3 and Schedule 4 of the Wildlife Protection Act. So however, Schedule 5 of the Wildlife Protection Act talks about the animals which could be hunted, for example ducks, deers, right? So those animals which can be hunted with the prior permission of the Chief of Wildlife Warden, and these animals are called as vermin species, right? So however, in order to hunt down these vermin species, the permission of Chief Wildlife Warden is required. So what does Schedule 6 of the Wildlife Protection Act talks about? So the Schedule 6 of the Wildlife Protection Act, so it concerns with respect to the cultivation and also the plant life. It mostly deals with the plants as well as the cultivation of those plants, and gives teeth to setting up a more protected animal parks as well. However, there are certain plants, for the cultivation of those plants permission is required from the concerned authorities if any plant is placed under the Schedule 6 of the Wildlife Protection Act. So the next very important topic is Aral Sea? In recent times, Aral Sea has been drying up at a faster pace, and in fact this is a favorite topic for the UPSC, because UPSC has been repeating a number of seas and lakes which are drying up. In 2023 also they have asked, 24 also they have asked. Now in this context we will understand why Aral Sea has been disappearing at a faster pace, and why Aral Sea is now converting itself into a desert, right? So Aral Sea, which is located in the Central Asia between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. So this is the location of Aral Sea, right? So it is located between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and Aral Sea is fed by the rivers called Sir Darya River and Darya River. So these two rivers mainly fed the Aral Sea, right? So however, the Aral Sea was once considered as a vast water body. So this was a vast water body once, and it has undergone the geological changes because of its dramatic shrinkage. So these geological changes have led to the dramatic shrinkage of the Aral Sea. However, experts believe that the transformation of Aral Sea began back in 1960s, and the main reason for the disappearance of the Aral Sea is the human interventions in the river systems. So human interventions in the river systems is the main reason for the shrinkage of the Aral Sea. Now one thing that we should understand here is Aral Sea is a landlocked sea between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and human intervention in the river system which mainly fed the Aral Sea are majorly responsible for the disappearance or shrinking of the Aral Sea, right? So here we'll understand the geological changes in the Aral Sea basin. So what kind of a geological changes that we could observe in the Aral Sea? So recent research has been indicating that the land which has been surrounding this Aral Sea is experiencing an upward movement. So the land which has been surrounding the Aral Sea has been experiencing the upward movement. That means the crust has been moving upside. So this phenomena is actually linked to the loss of water weight from the lake. So since the loss of water weight from the lake has resulted in the upliftment of the crust surrounding the Aral Sea, and in fact the Soviet era diversion of rivers was also led to the decrease in the river water levels, the decrease in the water levels in the Aral Sea, causing Earth's crust to slowly rise. So Earth's crust surrounding the Aral Sea slowly rising up. And in fact, the satellite technology, the satellite data has also been used to regularly monitor the water levels of Aral Sea. And in fact, the satellite data has been showing that an increase of about 1.6 inches right from 2010 to 2020. So therefore the land which has been surrounding the Aral Sea has been rising up. So this is the main and important geological change that could be observed near the Aral Sea. Now you could see here, this was the condition of Aral Sea in 1989, and now this is the condition of Aral Sea in 2003. So Aral Sea is drying up, and Aral Sea is also converting itself into a new desert called Aralkum desert, right? So it has been converting itself into an Aralkum desert. So earlier it was a sea, but now it has been converting itself into the Aralkum desert. And in fact, the human interventions or human factors are also responsible for the disappearance or drying up of this Aral Sea. And in this context, as we have already discussed, that the disappearance of the Aral Sea has given way to the emergence of Aralkum desert, which has become a source of dust in the surrounding regions. And the studies also indicate the dust emissions from this particular area nearly doubled from 1985 to 2015. So the dust storms have been increased substantially, and in fact the contaminated dust from this particular region is now spreading to the nearby countries, thereby overall affecting the air quality and also the public health of the people as well. However, we have understood that the Aral Sea has been disappearing or declining at a faster pace, and this decline serves a stark reminder of the impact of human actions on other lakes and also the water bodies across the world, because we are exploiting the water resources. And anthropogenic factors or human interventions are largely responsible for the disappearance of lakes, ponds, and even the larger seas like Aral Sea. And in fact, the changes in the land elevation, atmospheric conditions which are existing actually highlight the interconnectedness of human activity and also the geological processes responsible for the disappearance of these large lakes. And in fact, UPSC already asked about this Aral Sea, and even UPSC asked about another lake called Lake Urmia in Iran. So Lake Urmia in Iran, and this lake is also disappearing at a faster pace. So similar situations such as drying up of Lake Urmia in Iran, indicating a broader environmental concerns that actually require an ongoing scientific investigation to understand the reasons for the disappearance and shrinkage of these large water bodies and their impact on the human populations and the environment as well. So thereby a necessary action and also the measures could be taken to replenish these water bodies and sustainably manage the resources, particularly the crucial water resources from these water bodies. And it is important for you to go through all important lakes, water bodies, seas which are shrinking, disappearing all throughout the world, because there is a possibility of UPSC asking question from this particular section. And in this image, you could see the major lakes and water bodies all across the world, and these are also very important. And you could get a question that UPSC may give a lake and ask you to match it with the country where it is located, right? So therefore, there are certain lakes which are located in African continent, and they are very important. And in fact, UPSC has already asked about this Lake Titicaca in South Africa, Lake Tanganyika, Lake Nyasa, Lake Chad, Lake Tana and Turkana, and Lake Victoria. So these are important lakes in the African continent, right? So Aral Sea, which has been disappearing at a faster pace, so and the disappearance has given way to the emergence of a desert in the Aral Sea, and that has been contaminating the air, impacting air quality and also the health of the people as well. However, Lake Urmia is located in Iran and it is not given here, and Caspian Sea is also located in Central Asia. So however, Lake Balkash, Lake Baikal, so Lake Baikal is located in Russia. Lake Baikal is located in Russia, and Lake Ladoga, Lake Warner. So these are different lakes which are located in Russia and also Europe and North America. So a Great Lake, Lake Winnipeg, and Lake Great Bear Lake in Canada, Great Slave Lake in Canada, Lake Athabasca, in Canada, and Great Salt Lake in US. So this Great Salt Lake in US is also disappearing at a faster pace, right? So in fact, so this is Lake Albert. So these are different lakes and large water bodies all across the world. So it is important for you to understand where these lakes are located, so in which country these lakes are located, because there is a possibility of questions being asked from this particular portion by the UPSC. So a next very important topic is BRICS has launched a land restoration partnership. So we'll understand what exactly is a land restoration partnership, because recently land restoration partnership has been launched by which of the following, or it is an initiative of which of the following organizations. So such questions may be asked in your examination. So recently a BRICS grouping of BRICS nations have introduced a BRICS land restoration partnership, and in fact this was launched in 15th BRICS agriculture ministers meeting in Brazil. In 15th BRICS agricultural ministers meeting, the land restoration partnership has been launched. And in fact, what is the objective of the land restoration partnership of the BRICS grouping? So it aims to tackle land degradation, desertification, soil fertility loss across its 11 members. So we'll understand the 11 members of the BRICS grouping as well. So apart from that, the partnership puts a stress on a collective commitment to reforming global agri-food systems to be fair, inclusive, innovative and sustainable as well. So in fact, when we talk about the BRICS grouping, initially the BRICS grouping comprises Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. However, in 2023, 5 new members joined BRICS grouping. So 5 new members joined BRICS grouping. So those 5 new members are United Arab Emirates, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Egypt. So these 5 members joined the BRICS grouping. So BRICS has been expanded and it become a 10-member grouping. However, in 2025, Indonesia also joined. So Indonesia also became a member of the BRICS grouping. So total there are 11 member countries in the BRICS grouping, and this is also very, very important. You can expect a question from this as well, right? So a land restoration partnership has been launched by the BRICS grouping. So initially BRICS was formed in the year 2001. So it was formed initially in 2001, but it expanded to include 6 new members. So 6 new members joined in the BRICS grouping and it became a 11-member grouping. And what are the objectives of the BRICS grouping? So we have understood the objectives of land restoration partnership. So land restoration partnership specifically focuses on restoration of agricultural land, improving the soil fertility and also achieving food security of all the member countries in the BRICS grouping. So that is the objective of land restoration partnership, and it is very important for a country like India with almost 142 crore population. And food security for India is also very important, and more than 50% of its people are directly and indirectly dependent on agriculture, and this initiative is very, very important. So what are the objectives of the BRICS grouping? So if we talk about the objectives of BRICS grouping, so it increase the influence of the emerging economies in the global politics. And in fact, so if you take a look at the global politics, so global politics mostly dominated by the developed countries. However, the BRICS member countries emerged as an alternative to the developed countries dominating the global politics and the global order. So that is the first objective. The second objective is challenging the dominance of the Western countries or Western nations in organizations like IMF and World Bank. Third is a greater voice and representation for the emerging economies, because all these countries are the developing countries. And for example, if we talk about countries like India, so India is playing a very important and a very crucial role for the development of the global south. So therefore, the BRICS grouping is considered as a greater voice and representation for the emerging economies in the world, and these are the basic objectives of the BRICS grouping. However, so according to the World Bank, the 5 BRICS countries earlier, before expansion, so they comprise 41% of the global population, 24% of the world's GDP, and 16% share in the global trade, and 29.3% share in the total land surface. However, after 6 more members become part of the BRICS grouping, so this data might change. So this data might increase. And in fact, these are the 2 initiatives of the BRICS grouping. One is the contingent reserve arrangement. So what is this contingent reserve arrangement of the BRICS grouping? So it is important. So the contingent reserve arrangement is an agreement among the BRICS member countries or the central banks of the BRICS member countries for a mutual support during sudden currency crisis. So if they face sudden currency crisis, through the contingent reserve arrangement, the BRICS countries will assist each other. The second important initiative of the BRICS grouping is New Development Bank. For example, how the developed world established Bretton Woods organizations like IMF, World Bank. So BRICS member countries have also established a New Development Bank. And the authorized capital of the New Development Bank is $100 billion, and it is located in Shanghai, China. The headquarters of New Development Bank is in Shanghai, China. And in fact, the New Development Bank NDB was created to meet the developmental funding requirements of the 5 founding members of the BRICS organization. Right, so these are the 2 initiatives of very important initiatives and the objectives of the BRICS grouping, and we have already understood the objectives of the land restoration partnership by the BRICS member countries. Next, we'll understand another very important and interesting topic, so that is Lucy mission of NASA. So we'll understand what is this Lucy mission by NASA and what is its main objective and what are the other important space missions by different countries. So recently, a Lucy spacecraft of NASA is set to make a flyby of the asteroid called Donald Johnson, and in fact, Lucy mission objective is to study asteroids in the asteroid belt between the Mars and Jupiter. So this asteroid belt is located between Mars and Jupiter, and the objective of Lucy mission of NASA is to study different asteroids in the asteroid belt. And in fact, it is located in 139 million miles from the Earth. This Donald Johnson asteroid resides in the asteroid belt, and this asteroid belt lies between Mars and Jupiter. And this flyby by the Lucy mission close to the Donald Johnson asteroid will enable Lucy to gather a vital data, important data about the asteroid's size and also shape. So we'll be understanding about a Lucy mission. And this Lucy mission was launched by whom? NASA has launched this Lucy mission in the year 2021. And the primary mission of Lucy is to study the primitive asteroids that have existed since the solar system's formation. And the overall objective of the Lucy mission is to study some asteroids which were existed since the formation of the solar system, so that we could have important insights, important information about the origin of solar system. And in fact, these celestial bodies that the Lucy mission is going to study serve as a time capsules, and they also offer vital information about the early conditions and early conditions that led to the formation of solar system, right? So you could also see here NASA's Lucy mission was launched in 2021 to explore Jupiter Trojan asteroids. So we'll understand what are these Trojan asteroids as well. And it was launched aboard Atlas V401 rocket. And in fact, this mission is named after Lucy, a 3.2 million year old human ancestor belonging to the hominins species, right? So Lucy is a 3.2 million year old human ancestor who belongs to the hominins species, right? So this is a very important. So you might get a question about this Trojan asteroid. So you might be asked, what are these Trojan asteroids? So remember, I told you that the asteroid belt is located between Mars and the Jupiter. So Trojan asteroids are actually the group of asteroids that share an orbit with the large planets. So they share an orbit with the large planets, and their name comes from the Greek mythology, right? So these are considered as the Trojan asteroids. For example, there are certain planets which are the larger planets, and larger planets have a orbit. However, the Trojan asteroids also share the same orbit with these larger stars. So those asteroids are considered as the Trojan asteroids. So Lucy mission is named after a 3.2 million year old ancestor known as Lucy. And in fact, NASA's Lucy mission will visit 8 different asteroids in the asteroid belt to deepen the understanding of our solar system. Now, why NASA is studying these 8 different asteroids? Because these asteroids are primitive asteroids, and these asteroids existed since the formation of the solar system, and that is why it is important to study these different asteroids. And Lucy mission is going to study these 7 bodies, 7 celestial bodies as of now, right? So you can go through all these 7 celestial bodies. Okay, so one is a Donald Johnson and Eurybates, Polymale and Lucas, Orus, Patroclus and Menoetius. Okay, so these are the celestial bodies that Lucy mission has come across, right? And in fact, this is also very important that there are different space missions by different countries. For example, NASA, Messenger to Mercury, European Space Agency, Bopi Colombo to study Mercury. For Venus, NASA is going to send a Magellan, Da Vinci, Veritas, and ISRO is going to send Shukriyan to Mercury, and European Space Agency is going to send Envision Venus Express. And to study Mars, NASA is going to send InSight, Odyssey, Pathfinder, Maven, Viking and Perseverance. However, when we talk about the ISRO, so Mangalyaan, so ISRO Mangalyaan is already sent to the Mars, and China, Tianwen-1, UAE Hope and European Space Agency, ExoMars and Mars Express. So for Jupiter, NASA and European Space Agency, right? So to study Jupiter, NASA is going to send Voyager 1, Voyager 2, Juno and Europe Clipper. So European Space Agency is going to send JUICE mission. And to study Saturn, NASA is going to send Voyager 1, Voyager 2 and Cassini, and European Space Agency is going to send Huygens. And to study Uranus, NASA is going to send Voyager 2 and Neptune, again Voyager 2. So these are important missions and they are very important, right? So therefore please kindly go through all important missions. So however, in order to study Sun, NASA is going to send Parker Solar Probe. It is already NASA already launched this Parker Solar Probe, Muse and Helioswarm and Heliophysics Solar Orbiter, and ISRO Aditya L1. So ISRO also launched this Aditya L1 to study the Sun as well, right? So these are various space missions and they're very important for your exam. And next we'll be understanding about standing deposit facility. So what exactly is the standing deposit facility? Standing deposit facility is also very important for your examination, along with other important instruments of the Reserve Bank of India, because these instruments of Reserve Bank of India controls the money in the economy, right? So the standing deposit facility has become an important tool for the Reserve Bank of India to manage liquidity in the banking system, right? So I would like to explain the standing deposit facility to you. That imagine that in case of any crisis situation that is prevalent in the economy and banking system has the excess money with them and they don't know where to park this money, they could actually approach the Reserve Bank of India and they could also park their money with the Reserve Bank of India and they could also earn the interest rates as well. However, here Reserve Bank will not give any collateral to the banks which park their money with the Reserve Bank of India under the standing deposit facility. So this is the standing deposit facility. So generally, so imagine that there is commercial banks A, B, C, and it is the Reserve Bank of India. So in case all these banks have excess liquidity with them and they don't want it to lend and they believe that they have excess liquidity with themselves, so they could actually park their money with the Reserve Bank of India and they could also earn a certain rate of interest as well. However, Reserve Bank will not give any collateral, right? So Reserve Bank will not give any government securities to these banks in return. So that is the standing deposit facility. So therefore the standing deposit facility is an important tool for the Reserve Bank of India in managing the liquidity in the banking system. So it could actually manage the liquidity in the banking system. So the standing deposit facility SDF was introduced in 2022 and this SDF allows banks to deposit surplus funds. So if banks believe that they have a surplus funds, they can deposit the surplus funds with the Reserve Bank of India without needing to provide collateral in return. So RBI will not provide collateral in return to the banks under the standing deposit facility. In fact, this mechanism has evolved to address the challenges which are faced by these banks during the periods of high liquidity. In case there is a high liquidity in the economy and these banks also have a higher liquidity, so they could actually park their money with the Reserve Bank of India and they could also earn a certain rate of return as well without needing the RBI to give collateral government securities in return. I hope it is clear for you. And in fact, the standing deposit facility is considered as the liquidity absorption tool because it absorbs excess liquidity in the market, thereby controlling inflation in the economy, one thing. And in fact, this allows the banks to park their excess money, excess funds with the Reserve Bank of India while also earning the interest rate, and this is what is considered as the standing deposit facility of the RBI. However, there are certain quantitative instruments of the monetary policy. For example, liquidity adjustment facility is also one such quantitative instrument of monetary policy. Statutory liquidity ratio statutory liquidity ratio and liquidity adjustment facility, bank rate and cash reserve rate ratio, and even the open market operations. So these are considered as the quantitative instruments of the monetary policy. Now we'll try to understand what is the liquidity adjustment facility of the Reserve Bank of India. So it is actually, it actually comprises repo rate, reverse repo rate. For example, repo rate is the rate at which RBI lend money to the commercial banks, right? So hence RBI purchases the securities. So RBI purchases securities from the commercial banks and RBI gives a lend money to the commercial banks. That is the repo rate. So the rate at which RBI lend money to the commercial banks while purchasing the securities from the commercial bank. So what is the reverse repo rate? So this is the rate at which RBI borrows money from the commercial banks within the country, and it is the opposite of the reverse repo rate. If RBI wants to signal a tight monetary policy, so what exactly is a tight monetary policy? So in case of inflationary fears in the economy, RBI adopts a tight monetary policy where RBI will start absorbing the excess liquidity in the economy. So it will increase the repo rate and banks will increase their lending rates also, and that will lead to the absorbing the excess liquidity in the economy and also controlling the inflationary pressures as well. However, what is the bank rate? So we should also talk about the bank rate as well. So it is a long-term rate, but repo rate is a short-term rate, but the bank rate is a long-term rate at which central bank lends money to the other banks. And increase in the repo rate actually means that increase in the interest rate by the commercial banks. So for example, if you are taking a loan from the commercial bank, if bank rate is higher, then the banks would also offer you loan at a higher interest rate, right? So a statutory liquidity rate and a statutory liquidity ratio and cash reserve ratio, these are also very important ratios. So statutory liquidity ratio is a certain percentage of the deposits that a commercial bank has to maintain with itself in the form of liquid cash, gold and the securities. And if RBI wants to tighten the monetary policy, it will raise the statutory liquidity ratio. So it will actually increase the statutory liquidity ratio. And what is the cash reserve ratio? So banks are required to hold a certain proportion of their deposits in the form of cash with the Reserve Bank of India. And with increase in the cash reserve ratio, again banks will increase the lending rates as well. So these are the simple aspects with respect to the statutory liquidity ratio and cash reserve ratio as well. So open market operations, so RBI generally purchases and sells the securities with it to either absorb or pump in more liquidity into the economy. So that is what is called as the open market operations conducted by the Reserve Bank of India. So the next topic is the doctrine of prospective overruling. So we'll be understanding what exactly is the doctrine of prospective overruling. Supreme Court of India recently clarified that the application of the doctrine of prospective overruling. So in this, we'll just try to understand what is the principle of prospective overruling in a very detailed manner, because this is important for your prelims and mains examination as well. The doctrine of prospective overruling, so it allows the courts to declare that a new legal principle applies only to the future cases, right? For example, if Supreme Court comes up with a new legal principle, so that legal principle will be applicable for the new cases only, and it will not be applicable for the old cases, and that is what is called as the doctrine of prospective overruling. And this is done to avoid injustice or confusion, the injustice or confusion that may result from the sudden legal changes. So you cannot make a sudden legal changes because those sudden legal changes may result in injustice, and they may also create a confusion in the existing legal system, right? So in fact, the doctrine of prospective overruling also helps ensure a smooth legal transitions by protecting the actions which were done under the old rule. And in fact, the doctrine of prospective overruling essentially came from US courts and was adopted in India later times. However, the first case or the first judgment of the Supreme Court where this doctrine of prospective ruling was adopted was during the Golaknath versus State of Punjab case. So in this case, the doctrine of prospective ruling was adopted by the Supreme Court. Now in this context, we'll understand when the doctrine of the prospective ruling can be used. So this doctrine of prospective overruling can only be used in constitutional cases where a substantial constitutional questions are involved in a particular case. Only then the doctrine of prospective overruling can be used by the Supreme Court. Second, so it can be applied only by the Supreme Court. High courts and the other local courts, they don't have the right and the power to apply the principle of progressive overruling. And in fact, the past actions under the old laws are not disturbed in this, right? So apart from that, it also prevents the reopening of old cases and the unnecessary litigation by the courts. And in fact, this also gives a time to adjust to the new rule by the Supreme Courts. So for the first time that the principle of prospective overruling was applied by the Supreme Court in Golaknath versus State of Punjab 1967 case. So this was the case for the first time this doctrine was used by the Supreme Court. So in this case, the court said that Parliament cannot change the fundamental rights. But to avoid confusion, this rule applied only to the future cases but not to the old cases, and this is what the Supreme Court has said. And the Supreme Court actually brought in the doctrine of the prospective overruling under Article 142 of the Indian Constitution. Using its powers under the Article 142 of the Indian Constitution, the Supreme Court has brought in the doctrine of prospective overruling. And what does Article 142 of the Indian Constitution says? So it says the power of the Supreme Court to do complete justice in any case is what Article 42 of the Indian Constitution talks about. So under Article 142, the Supreme Court has brought in the principle of prospective overruling. So I hope you have understood this, and that's all in this lecture. And if you have any doubts, please post those doubts in the comment section, and thank you so much.